Good morning. Call the Deferred Comp Advisory Committee meeting to order, Thursday, July 25. The time is 10:06 a.m. I'd like to begin with roll call, please.
Okay. Roll call, Jennifer Goodman.
Here.
Jason Whelan.
Here.
Kathy Herman. Stephen Hopkins. Fonse Kiocum.
Present.
Paul Canepa.
Here.
Sandy Regallo. Jeff Wohlkamp. Thank you.
All right. Next on our agenda is approval of the minutes for the quarterly meeting which was
Move to approve. This is Fonse. I'll second with a comment. I don't think, did we receive it via email or was this in the package?
we did not receive via email,
Okay.
so
Okay.
if
just read
the,
it,
if the
so-
committee needs time to review.
No, I read it before the meeting, so
Okay.
we're good. I second it.
I'm sorry, I lost the motion on that. Who motioned?
Me.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so we have a first and a second. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next on the agenda, public comment. Ms. Strange, do we have any public comment?
We do not have any at this time. Thank you.
Then we'll move to John Stengel and the report from Nationwide.
Thank you, and good morning to everybody.
And I believe we were going to have that available on the,
Can we have you pull your microphone?
oh, there we go.
Good. Okay. All right, so we'll do this in a couple of parts. I'll start with the plan statistics on the 457 as well as the 401A plan, and then we're also going to talk about a couple of the optional Secure Act 2.0 provisions that have that are now able to be implemented from Nationwide. One is going live 1/1/25, so we'll cover those, and then we'll have a field update from Brenda. And so feel free to ask questions as we go. So this is the plan snapshot on the screen, and there's think a couple second delay on the slide. So the top row is the balance at the end of the first quarter, and then the subsequent rows are all of the activity within the second quarter, so April 1st to June 30th. So that first row is contributions, that's cash flow in both plans, so Nationwide received $9 million in new money. Distributions, a little bit more came out than went in for the second quarter, we'll talk about that. Then we subtract off fees and loans, and then other activity defined down there. We have a footnote, capital gains, dividends, et cetera. And then the market gain loss. So whenever there is not a parenthesis, that's a good thing. So the market cooperated in the second quarter. The plan grew by $8.7 million and just simply market growth. And so that's always nice to see, for a total of $581 million in assets. So with respect to just your 457, so we have slides on your 457, and then we have a couple of slides on the 401A. So this is just your 457 plan. This is really the main page that talks about the overall stats. And so again, we have your asset balance just in your 457, and then going across to the right, there's pages on each of these. I won't really cover all of that. So loans outstanding, we have a page on loans, but again, once it gets back, apologize, again, there's a little bit of a delay. 3.6 million in outstanding loans, 2.2 in self-directed brokerage money. I have a Schwab report. Schwab sent me the report late last night, so I have that on my screen. I also sent that through email, so that'll get distributed to everyone. But there's $2.2 million in self-directed brokerage account assets that have been moved into Schwab. On the left, 7,233 participants with a balance. So that's, again, as of the end of June. Your average balance is around 76,000, slightly down from last quarter, but still holding pretty consistent. And then new enrollments, that's an outstanding number for the quarter. We had 283 new enrollments. So Brenda's doing an amazing job of getting all of her employees signed up. The quarter prior, we had over 200 as well. So just in the first 6 months of the year, almost 500 people have signed up for the plan. Contributions, again, that's cash flow coming into Nationwide. Loan payments, that's loan payment cash flow coming back into Nationwide for folks that have existing loans. Rollovers, transfers in. Rollover, that is from outside sources coming into the plan. So when Brenda meets with employees, she'll always ask them, do you have accounts elsewhere? Sometimes they say yes, and then she'll recommend to consolidate those accounts into Nationwide. So that's what that number shows. Distributions coming out, then we have loan disbursements coming out, and then rollovers and transfers out as well to other vendors. So with respect to participation, on the bottom of the screen, there's that pie chart. That shows your assets, whether you're working or non-working. It's a quick summary. So 52% of your assets in your plan are held by people that are still working for the county. So almost half your money is held by participants that have left the county. So we want to make sure that we keep those assets in the plan as much as possible, because once they leave service, you can cash it in, roll it over, do nothing. You know, there's lots of things that the employees can choose to do. So we're trying to keep that money invested with Nationwide. Then on the right of that, we have Roth usage. That's the Roth 457 type. And there's over 1,000 participants have about 7.5 million in Roth assets. So Roth has not been around that long, so we track that separately since it's record kept after tax versus pre-tax. So I'm going to skip the next page and move to contributions. So contributions is just simply cash flow coming in. We have the salary contributions of 6.8, and then the rollovers in. Transfers in, that's 457 money coming in. Rollovers is anything else than 457. So it could be an IRA, a 401k, et cetera. And then on the bottom left, we have participants contributing. So we have over 4,000 currently with an active contribution. And then the quarterly Roth money, again, that Roth after-tax money type is separated out so we can track that. But again, most of the contributions that the plan is receiving is coming from payroll deductions. For distributions, money out slightly larger than money in for the quarter. Part of that has to account for rollouts. So we had over $4 million leave the plan. It's fairly common when participants leave service with the county. They can do anything with the money. A lot of times they choose to roll it over. So we track where the money goes. We only have room for 5 line items on the report. So these are the top 5 companies that receive the rollouts. So they're moving to Schwab. And for some reason, Schwab is always on the top of the list. And you know, for all of our plans, it's not just here, even though they have Schwab here. So they can always invest in Schwab through the self-directed account. And then we have Edward Jones, common names. That accounted for most of that 4.3 million. 3.4 out of the 4.3 was just 5 providers. And so those are the most common places where participants send their money to when they take a distribution and or roll out to the plan. The rest is simply in cash. They're taking it for various reasons. We categorize it when they take a distribution. We'll categorize whether it's simply for retirement, whether it's a quadro, or really anything. So we track it all and let you know how many, and then the total number for each of the categories.
I have a question.
Sure.
So you said the almost 500 people coming in. Do you track just the number going out? What's the number going out, or do you just track the dollar amount? So I mean,
yeah, we do track all of it, but for the reports, we put money out on the report for some reason. We've never really considered tracking money in. That's a good point. We have the stats, we just don't show it in the report.
okay. But I'm just saying how many human beings went out. So if you got 500 new, how many human beings left? You give it a dollar amount, but it would be nice to know what's your aggregate number, because you're giving an aggregate dollar amount.
Yeah,
But
so on the kind of the bottom or right in the middle, we have current quarter and the number 328. So we have 328 types of distributions. Doesn't mean that's 328 people. That's
Okay.
just total numbers of
Okay.
the distribution. So it's less than 328,
okay,
but we don't have the exact number.
because you were saying you're trying to keep that number
Yeah.
from going
To grow the plan.
lopsided, right?
Mhm.
All right, thank you.
For sure, yeah. And then for asset allocation, on the upper left, it shows where the money is held in the plan, and highest group reports will also have similar data. So at the current snapshot of 6/30, 22% of all your money was in target dates, called asset allocation. Then you see that there wasn't any money in balance funds. They're under 4% in bonds. About a fourth of your assets are in fixed assets and cash, so not subject to market fluctuation. Then 35% is in large cap. So participants here that have money, they like to invest in large cap and fixed and target date funds, which is a good thing. So they're diversified. And so we just wanted to point out where your current money is held. And then, actually I'll go up to contributions, because contributions will show where future money is being directed. And I know it's kind of small to see, but on the right-hand, on the bottom right-hand side, so 51% of every new dollar the plan is receiving is going to target date funds. So that's more than half the money that Nationwide receives is going there. So the target date allocation is going to continue growing. And then fixed assets and cash is only 14.4%. So with new contributions, your employees are more aggressive because they're putting most of the money in the market.
So, quick question regarding the distribution. I'm assuming because it's in the second quarter, it's just because a lot of people are retiring during that time and they're just taking all their money out with them, and it's not going to be the same the next quarter. Thank you.
Yeah, it does tend to fluctuate a bit. I know fourth quarter sometimes is larger because you have the RMDs coming out. Most people do that in the fall. So fourth quarter usually is a little bit larger. And then sometimes depends on the organization. Sometimes there's a lot of retirees going out the door.
March 31st.
So there it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that could trickle over probably into second quarter too. If they're leaving on March 31st, they're probably taking the money in second quarter.
Yeah.
So just a couple more slides. Loans, not much to say here. The average loan amount on the upper, so we had 57 new loans, 330 active loans, 16 were closed. The average loan balance on the upper right is just over 9,000. That's on the, I would say, the lower end. The average nationwide loan is right around 11,000, so slightly under. So a lot of loans in the plan, but the average balance, I would say, is fairly small. And then we do track all of the loan activity. So nothing really to report there. There were 57 new versus 16 closed. So loans are starting to grow a little bit, but the average amount is not growing, if that makes sense. And then to wrap up your 457 plan, we also track e-delivery. So this is something new that Nationwide's doing to report back to committees. when you look at the middle of the screen, so e-delivery is the service that gets you out of getting paper copies of your statements and any other transactional activity. So 70% of your participants have adopted that. Online enrollment, so we're still using a combination of paper versus electronic. Online distributions, that's becoming more popular. It's now easier to take money out through the computer versus filling out a form. So that is definitely trending towards most people are utilizing online. Beneficiaries on file in the upper right, and so 90% of the participants, at least with us, have a beneficiary named. So there's that 10% factor. Sometimes the county has a copy, so we will always refer back if we don't have it. But there are, again, 10% of the folks with us that don't have one. We send out at least an annual notification for those people who don't have a beneficiary to make sure they have one on file. Emails, 88%, really good number. We do most of our marketing communications through email, so the greater number of emails, the better off the plan is, so you're close to 90%. And then online accounts, 59% of the participants have an online account nationwide. This number is going to continue growing because of the relationship. I think we've had you for just for a few years, so that number is going to continue going upwards. And then the interactive tools on the very bottom, we call MRP, My Interactive Retirement Planner. About a third of your participants have used the software. That is also going to continue growing because we haven't had enough time to really to get everyone to sign up or not sign up, but just to review that software. And then MIP, what we call My Investment Planner, that is free online advice. So if someone wanted to get advice as to what funds to have and not pay that, not pay managed account fees, et cetera, there are 25 people did that. So they went through the software and then it actually told them what funds to choose. So that's a free service that Nationwide has. And so we track that each quarter. Again, 25% in that just that second quarter used the service. And then I'll wrap up with your 401A plan. I won't go through all of the details like the 457, but this is just the main, or these are the main stats. So $30 million in your 401A plan, 142 participants with the balance, new enrollment 0, your average account balance 212,000, so fairly large average balance in your 401A. Some money came in under $1 million. We didn't have any rollovers in for the quarter, and then we had some money out. So we had distributions and then transfers, rollovers out as well. So not as much activity, but wanted to at least share the 401A statistics with you. So I'll pause and see if there's any questions about just your nationwide stats with your plans. Things are looking really good overall. We have really good participation. Asset allocation is very strong, healthy average balance. So.
Just a quick question. It's not so much related to the finances, but so much of the platform. Is it possible to get a rate of return on the investments that you currently have for each quarter? Is that a setting issue? Because I know that you'll show the returns on each of the funds individually, but say you had a selection of funds and you kind of want to see that return for that quarter. Is that possible to have on the platform?
On the website. It's not there.
Okay. Let me take a note. It's typically called individual rate of return, IRR, so.
I don't remember seeing that in there.
Thank you.
Yeah. On the statements?
It's not online, like most of our plans show it. First year I figured it was because we didn't have enough history, but.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I have one question on the engagement and enablement. So the online enrollment those benchmarks on just 2 are lower. Everyone else is. Can you explain that? So online enrollment, it's 23%.
Address that.
On 14.
Paul, I can help address that.
And then the other one was the participant's online account, and that's the only one that's short. I mean, you're 16 points off for the benchmark.
Yeah, so in regard to your online enrollment question, the process that I have in place is when I do the new employee orientation, the county shares the list of new employees with me. And so I do a quick presentation, but then I send them all out our one-page easy enrollment form via DocuSign. Because when people are coming on board, there's so much to do. It sends them out a reminder and they get a 60-day window to enroll or let it expire. So a good majority of the employees are taking advantage of the easy enrollment form, and that's why we tend to have higher numbers in the target date funds because they don't have to pick an investment to get started. So that drives the enrollment numbers higher, but it does detract from the online enrollment. So,
So it's another avenue that they're going into, okay. 'Cause,
yes,
yeah,
yes.
I saw
So-
23% and that was kind of low.
Right, so DocuSign is great for boosting initial participation, but it does mean that the online enrollment numbers are a little bit lower. But when I sit with people, we do online.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we're not losing the percentage.
Right, and then as far as people setting up their online access, that tends to lag also because they fill out a form, they get busy at work, they don't circle back and set up their online access. So that eventually happens when they want to make investment changes, contribution changes, then they meet with me or they set up their online access. So that will eventually happen and those numbers will eventually go up.
Okay.
Does that help?
Yeah, and then, so that, the participant one, that's the same thing?
Oh, the online account access, yes. Yes, so what happens
Yeah,
is,
okay.
when they get the DocuSign form, we send out a hard copy welcome letter to their address of record. Like when I enrolled in the 457 plan, I didn't pay attention to it. It took me
Crickets,
years
okay.
to set up my online access. So if most people are like me, they'll get around to it eventually. Yeah,
All right, thank you.
And I'm guessing by maybe some personal experience as you get later in your career, you want to be able to monitor a little bit more closely, and that's when the online account, I think, is really useful. Otherwise, most people are like, set it and forget it.
that's true.
I want to thank Brenda for coming out to the sheriff's office since our last meeting. She's been out there definitely trying to round people up, and we've done our best to kind of cordon them out of briefing and just kind of filter them right into her, so.
Thank
do what
you.
we can, so thank you.
That was fun.
Yeah, and I was out at SJGH for some meetings, and I saw Brenda out there as well, so
Yeah.
we know she's out meeting with employees, so it is appreciated.
Let's cover it. Let's
Oh,
talk
yeah.
about it. Sure.
Okay, so field update. Yes, I'm very excited. I've been able to make my way into a few more departments that I haven't had the chance to see yet. Thank you for helping me get into the sheriff's office. And yes, I went out to county hospital. They had me in their little small computer training room. I've been able to get out to Public Works. I did a little small group presentation there, and then I'm going back next month to meet with the staff there. I've also visited one of your 2 county landfills. And I'm sure it's safe to say that none of your other providers ever went to the landfills. But because I have such experience in the field and I happen to have another plan that has landfills, it was like, why not go? And I think it was a great opportunity to engage with your employees there. They were really great to work with. So I'm going to continue to work with other departments. I'm now working to get into like public health and some other departments and just sort of spread the service. So in addition to me being available on site and virtually, of course, we do our seminar series. We do it quarterly for you guys and with a lot of our employers, and participation here is always really great. We probably average about at least 20 employees per virtual seminar, and they're taking their time during their lunch hour to join us for 45 minutes to an hour to learn more about the deferred compensation plan. And so this is education that we offer in addition to the click and play videos and everything that we do on the website. So I think as the word gets out, HR does a really great job sending out the information for the education to your staff, so that's really great. Also, I had the chance to work with your county pension. I love that partnership that we have with them. And they did a For Those About to Retire seminar. I had the chance to talk to about 30 employees who are working toward retirement, so that was pretty exciting. So that's pretty much what is new in the field. And just really happy to be here and engaging with your employees. Any questions? Okay.
All right, so 2 more items for nationwide. The first is, I just received this last night from Schwab. This is your quarterly Schwab report. So I won't take much time on this, but we mentioned that there's roughly $2.2 million of deferred comp money that is currently being held with Schwab. So what they do is they send us a quarterly report letting the committee know where that money is being held. And so, again, this was, I just emailed this, so this will be distributed. And sorry for the small numbers. Let me see if I can make this any larger. So there are 13 participants that utilize Schwab, $2.2 million. The average balance is 172,000. So your average balance in your plan is roughly, I think it was around 76,000, so more than double. The average age, 62, mostly males. The assets that Schwab holds, so there's 37,000 in cash. There's money in ETFs. There's a lot of money in fixed income. So 1.2 million is there. And then we have $876,000 in mutual funds. And then we have on the report a listing of average positions in each account, as well as average trades. Not a lot of trades, so people that utilize Schwab are pretty much staying at least for the second quarter. They didn't really make that many moves. And then we track the top 10 mutual fund holdings, what they are in the plan, and then the total assets, and then the percentage of the Schwab assets. And then we also track the fund families. But it's interesting to see what they're buying, right? Because they have an excellent core line up here. So really, there's never really a need that's pressing to have Schwab unless you really want something specific that a deferred compensation plan is just not going to offer your employees. So like fixed income securities or sector funds or something that's really unique that they can get elsewhere. So they have that option. So we use Schwab as a way to keep money in the plan. So if someone says, well, I want a gold fund or I want whatever it is, we can then direct them to Schwab and they can get that with their assets instead of rolling their money out when they separate from the county. So it's a nice way to help conserve assets. In addition to the top holdings for the mutual funds, not much in equities. So you can see just a real small stock that your employees own. There's a few ETFs that your participants are buying. I don't like that first word up there. No, I'm kidding. But
So how do they do, and do you ever take
don't.
any of their ideas, or you do?
we have no idea. That's not, so Schwab will send them a statement, and then on that statement we'll have all of their holdings, and I'm not sure what the statements even look like. They don't let us know what the average returns are. There's thousands of different, tens of thousands of different things, maybe hundreds of thousands. I'm not even sure. The universe is pretty wide.
That's actually surprising. I thought these individuals or the more sophisticated investor was going to buy a bunch of equities on their own to get rich, and I didn't think they were going to be in fixed income. Just,
At least
why
for
would you-
now, right?
Yeah, why would you?
Yeah. Oh,
It's the CDs, I think, that are really attracting the retirees or those about to retire. That ad was attractive for people, and it's
Yeah.
keeping money in the plan a little bit. They do now. Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely helps conserve. I mean, we'll talk about rates, or actually Vince will cover rates and probably the future of rates, but people have been able to do it, get a fairly decent amount in just a simple money market fund, which hasn't happened very often. But anyways, wanted to share that. It's interesting to see what your employees are buying. And then the last item, we wanted to talk about Secure Act 2.0. There's a couple of provisions that we wanted to discuss with the committee, none of which are mandatory, at least not yet. So we'll start with one that will be mandatory the first of next year. And that provision is the, let's see here, that is the Section 109 for employees that are turning 60, 61, 62, and 63. For whatever reason, the IRS is going to allow people in those 4 years to put in more money in age 50 catch-up. So currently, the age 50 catch-up amount is $7,500 for this year. We're not sure what the limits are for next year. So starting 1/1/25, the county will allow all of the employees that are, again, 60, 61, 62, and 63 to put in 50% more than that $7,500 catch-up limit. You can't do the math. 50% more. And it's the year that you turn, let's say age 60. If you turn age 60 on December 20th, you can use it that calendar year. So it's the calendar in which you turn 60, 61, 62, and 63. So it works like age 50 catch-up. So county payroll will have to make an allowance for those people that are in those four ages to be able to put in more for age 50 catch-up. So it's a very specific rule to people that are only in those 4-year age bands. But part of Secure Act 2.0 allows this. So they wanted to give those people in those ages the opportunity to contribute more money than people in other ages, if that makes sense. So again, 60 to 63, and you have 4 years, you can go 50% higher than the $7,500 limit just for those 4 years. Questions? I know that
So
sounds weird.
is
but-
it a fixed amount that goes in monthly, or then how does that work if you're retroact?
Yeah, so it's
I mean,
not
if
the
it's a-
same as the doubling up. So it acts like age 50 catch-up, but they're letting you put in more. So you decide how much you want to contribute for those 4 years,
Yeah.
if any.
So right now,
But if you do it at the end of a year, you only have 6 months and, right?
You can start
Yeah.
Jan 1 because let's say you're turning 60 this year.
But I mean, so it'll be a higher dollar amount if you
Yeah.
average it over 12 months as opposed
Yes.
to doing it over 4 months.
yes.
So that's one of the not benefits of doing it mid-year. I mean, but I get it if you're doing it for 4 years. Okay.
Well, but you can start Jan 1 and have a smaller average amount. So let's say you want to take advantage and it's 7,500 plus 50%, so 10,000 plus. You can start Jan 1, even if you turn 50, or even if you turn 60 like in December, you have the whole calendar year still. So you don't have to wait till your birthday to start. You can
Okay.
start Jan 1.
Okay.
but
Oh,
then it
that
opens up a
answers the
window.
question. I get it. So then you start, you could, if you know it's gonna take effect in that year, then you could start
Yeah.
okay, thank you.
Yeah, in fact, some participants actually front-loaded or do as much as they can in January, February. So there's different ways to do it, either spread it out, wait till the end, wait till the beginning, or not wait till the beginning, but start at the beginning.
Yeah, so it's a very specific rule for only people that are in those 4 years, for whatever reason. No one knows why, but that's one of the laws of Secure Act 2.0. So we're just here to address it just to make sure that the committee's aware of it, that payroll's aware of it, because payroll's gonna have to program and allow those participants to contribute up to that new maximum for those 4 years. So you don't have to put in the whole thing if you don't want to. Thank you. Plus 23, yeah. It's pretty high limit. But if someone is gonna be leaving the county and has extra money, right, they can use it for that.
Yeah, that's great, because right now, if they're doing this special pre-retirement catch-up, they cannot use it in the year they retire. That doesn't apply to this new rule. So that's a benefit. Plus, there's no special paperwork.
Assuming our systems are set up for it, since you guys are doing it at age 50 already, it's just basically reprogramming it or adjusting a number on it.
Yeah, I think it's just a matter of adjusting those limits.
Yeah, and it goes
probably-
live on 1/1.
In PeopleSoft, I'm sure it means running a report. Hopefully in Workday, it'll be more configurable.
Cool. Do you wanna cover the next one?
Which one do you have?
The public safety.
The payments?
Yeah.
Okay. What section is that?
So we have a handout that we want to cover one more provision, and there's a handout that looks like this. And it's just for public safety, so just bear with us.
Okay. So there's actually two voluntary, or what we call optional provisions. So right now, with our public safety officers, when they are retired, they get the opportunity to use up to $3,000 of their pre-tax money in the 457 plan to help cover health insurance, and they don't have to pay any income tax on that. Right now, the way the code is set up, Nationwide has to send the money directly to the health insurance company, so directly to Kaiser. And so the problem with that is we would send a check to Kaiser and it may not have like the Kaiser member number on it. And they're like, we don't know who to apply this for. So there's a little bit of an administrative glitch with that. So the Secure Act has created an optional provision where if the county approves it, we can just send the money directly to the employee who's retired, and they use the money as they need it for their health insurance. It kind of cuts out the issue, because right now, the way we have it set up, anybody who stays on the group insurance here at the county can't use the provision because we can't send the check to a third-party administrator. So this really just opens up the flexibility of use for all of our retired public safety. So that would be something that the county has to vote on to adopt?
I would imagine so. to administer it, for us, it's very simple because it's an optional provision. So until we get a request from the county, just simple email asking us to adopt this provision, we'll keep it the way it is. But most of our plans are starting to opt into the new provision because public safety, it's very important. It's a much better, much easier process for public safety members. And so we are making sure that our committees understand that there's a new optional provision that you need to opt into. And there's a simple email to us, and then we would go live immediately. It takes about a day or two to go
So
live.
what happens if they get the funds and they don't use it for the purpose it was meant for?
Well, it's pretty much a known factor that when you're retired, your health insurance is on you, right? So it's the honor system, really. But again, it just makes the process a little bit easier in terms of accessing the money and using the provision. You know, you have to have the schedule in your tax report that says this is what I've paid. If it's over $5,000 or more, that's how it works, where we still have to send the 1099 out, but we don't do any withholding. But they file it in such a way, claiming in their tax report, I had to pay for health insurance, and then there's no tax liability due on it. Yeah. So it's a nice little perk for them, and it would just really smooth out the whole administrative process and make it's just ease of use for our retired public safety.
A question for you. So you're saying it's for safety members, so they have to be a member in the safety retirement group?
Yes.
For it to be a benefit? Okay.
Yes.
And if we had any current safety members, retired members who are utilizing like a sick leave conversion, they're not paying for their health benefit, is it something that they can use at some point in the future?
Well, it's tied to their income taxes, so if at some point in the future
Okay.
they're paying out of pocket, then
Okay.
then it's go.
Okay.
The other thing too, is we were talking about health insurance, it is health insurance plus long-term care insurance.
That's
So
right.
There is that important, that they may have their health care covered, but they could conceivably be long-term health care insurance.
Yeah.
So just going back, take a step back. So they received, did you say $5,000,
It's $3
$3,000 from the county or from the?
from their deferred compensation plan. It's so they can use the pre-tax money tax-free for health insurance.
Okay. And they're supposed to use it for health insurance, but they get it directly to themselves.
Right.
I don't know what $3,000 is gonna buy.
It's not gonna buy. I was just thinking
It's
about
like,
the, just
If we
thinking,
can simplify things, I'm for it, right? And giving the people the money in their pocket if they need
And
it for
honestly,
whatever they
it's-
pay for, is their money.
Yes, and it's actually a retention tool, because I've talked to retired public safety, and I'm like, if you move that over there, you're giving this little benefit up. And they're like, oh, I didn't know about that. So it does kind of work as a retention tool as well, when they're aware of it. I mean, $3,000 a year over 30 years in retirement, that's a little bit of money. That they get the benefit tax-free, so that's good.
I was just looking at the compliance side of it. That's all. I'm thinking, hey.
Yeah, it's totally allowed by the IRS, so, yeah, we also considered that, and they're fine with it. So the point of Securo, or Secure 2.0, is just to enhance the current rules, and this is one of those enhancements that the IRS allows and public safety loves. And so a lot of our plans are asking us to have these discussions, and of course, we want to take care of our public safety members as well. So the only caveat is that the county needs to opt into it because it's an optional provision. Not all plans will, but we just wanted to let you know that that's out there, and we are ready to go live and administer this. We have a few clients that have already opted in, so the time is right if you wanted to opt into this. Now would be a great time to at least consider doing so.
So do we have to agendize this for a future vote to bring it forward, or how are we doing this?
Aaron is nodding, yes, we do.
Okay. So
Currently
there's
for this meeting, it's just agendizes information only.
Okay, so then how to,
Next.
Again, I'm just concerned about the compliance side, how, hey, this is what we're supposed to do, and all of a sudden we don't do it, then it messes up something upstream, and you guys are saying, hey, nothing like that's gonna happen.
No, that'll be fine.
Yeah. There's another one too, since you brought that up. The IRS now allows hardship self-certifications where they don't need anything. They just ask for an amount and take it. And so that's an optional provision that,
Law enforcement only, or is for everybody?
that's for everybody. So Secure Act now allows self-certification for hardships. That's something that is optional. If committees want to discuss that, I'm not sure if that's something that would even interest you, but the IRS now allows it. We are ready to administer it. So if you wanted to let your participants take a hardship, not have to provide any documentation, that's now allowed if you opted into it. Since we're talking about things like that, we might as well throw that one on also. But I'm not sure if that's even something that you want to consider. None of my plans have opted into it, nor have they really discussed it or considered it yet. But since we're talking about it, and we're also ready to administer that optional provision, we wanted to also point that out, that's now available.
So can we agendize it for the next time to look into both of those? Do we do them two together going forward if we do bring it to the board?
Yeah.
Or can we put those two together? Is that what other municipalities are doing, or?
So on the screen, and I know let me try to expand this. There are several optional provisions that relate to governmental deferred compensation plans. The first we've talked about, some of these wouldn't really be applicable. There's the ability to have emergency savings accounts added of $1,000. There's the hardships, qualified federally declared disaster distributions. We're not ready to administer that one yet. And then the domestic abuse, I don't believe we're ready for that one yet either. So the only two that Nationwide is currently ready to go live on, the emergency withdrawal, actually these are not savings accounts, sorry, these are just emergency withdrawals and hardship self-certifications, and then the higher catch-up limits, that's mandatory. So the only really ones to consider would be the emergency withdrawals or self-certification for hardships. So if you wanted to add something to the agenda, those would be the two.
I mean, does that help as a tool to retain people if they know that they can possibly take it out for hardship? Or, I mean, is there mass exodus, or how long has this been allowed, and how long have people been using it?
It hasn't even, we haven't even been able to administer yet, so we don't have any tracking stats on it. It's something that's brand new.
I think you're gonna get to the position of, do you wanna protect the employees from doing those things? Within the other argument is, it's their money. If they do it anyways, this will relieve the penalties involved in it, or at least the paperwork that's involved in it, so.
Can you explain a little bit of what the typical documentation that is required for our hardships now?
And we take care of all that for you. So that's a service that you lean on us for. So back in the old days, I had clients that would bring the employee in and they would go through their financial records and they would kind of scrutinize what they asked for. Times have changed. And so when someone wants a hardship, the IRS is very clear on what to define as what a hardship is. It's even more clear than a 401k. So there's very few reasons why you can take a hardship. It has to be unforeseen. And it's typically things like you need a new roof for your house because of hail damage or wind damage, or your car broke down, or you have medical bills that are unforeseen and unbudgeted. And so what the employee has to do is request a specific amount and then back it up with some kind of documentation. Let's say they're going to be evicted and there's an eviction notice and they need $10,000. They would just supply the eviction or foreclosure notice to that hardship with that amount to back it up. So as long as they had an amount with documentation backing up that supports it, it should be allowed and unforeseen. If it's college tuition, I fit in that category now, that's not unforeseen. So that would be denied. So sometimes it's gray area, and then our team of experts figures that out and works with that employee, but that's typically how that works.
And now you're saying they don't need that? But there's penalties with it, so I mean, if you
If you didn't take it out, right, if you didn't have that unforeseen, if you didn't have that circumstance, I'm assuming you just can't just pull your money out with some sort of penalty.
So there's not a penalty in a 457 plan. It would be up to you. If you get audited, then you'd have to document that.
You, the
But
participant, not the committee.
correct,
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah.
You, the participant. It's like it's the honor system. We mentioned that earlier. That's up to the participant. You're absolved from any liability on their behalf. If they get audited, they're going to have to kind of true up the receipts and provide documentation later. But the IRS now allows it, so committees are starting to at least consider it, whether or not you want to allow it. You don't have to; it's optional. If you want to keep things the way they are, great, because this is brand new. So I haven't had any clients opt into this yet.
Are there maximums? So they could drain the entire account because they said something unforeseen came up?
Yeah, I'm not aware of any maximums.
Well, this one looks like it's a maximum of 4,000.
In a typical hardship, I'm not aware of a maximum. Yeah,
Right now, they just have to provide evidence of the hardship, and then we release the money, and they're on the honor system to use it for what they say they're gonna use it for. That's always been the case.
Under the
why
current,
not-
oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Under the current system, how long does documentation review take, and what is the acceptance versus rejection rate we currently see, roughly, any idea?
So that's a kind of a two-part answer. One is they have to fill out the application and provide the documentation to be considered to the next step. Most people fall out there, so they don't even get considered. Once they go through that process, I've heard anything from 80 to 90% of the time, then it's approved. They fall out during the paperwork process, because once they read the rules, then they're saying, oh, that isn't, that's not me, I don't have the receipts, because we'll go and reject it if they don't. Sometimes we reject it, and then they come back to us and say, oh, sorry, I forgot to attach something. So most of the time, it's gonna be approved because they've gone through that review process. Once they get that far, it's usually okay, but we take care of that for you. So we have a team that does nothing but hardship reviews. And the process takes roughly, I would say, about a week-ish, maybe 10 days to go.
Yeah,
3 to 5
3 to 5
business days.
initial review, and then
Yep.
possibly up to 10 if we need additional documentation, yeah.
Because to me, the two seem quite different from the earlier proposal of 3,000 for healthcare for a known retiree, which is kind of expected, versus you can drain the whole account in one go. That's concerning.
That was my idea, so I think we should motion for the first one that we were saying for the $3,000, and then maybe bring this one back at the first of the year to see how many people are participating, because I don't, you know what I mean?
Yeah, we'll
I don't
have
wanna
probably
jump
some
in.
more plans considering it. We haven't had any plans that have even discussed it yet.
Okay,
And I don't expect many would, at least in the next 3 to 6 months, but it's possible. We'll let you know. After the first of the year is definitely realistic.
because there seems like there's more questions than,
Supervisor Cannon, but they would both be coming back for a future meeting for
no, the
agendizing?
$3,000 one, I say we propose to do that now.
That one can't, currently it's just agendized as an informational item only.
I know, that's what I'm saying, agendize it so that we
Yes,
can get it
yes,
going,
and
so
then
that
do
we
them
bring it forward to the
separately.
board, and then come back to the second part of the discussion in 6 months to see how many people, if there's more information. I mean, if they're already doing the work, I mean, it's safer for people, because I think you're putting people at risk if they take this money and then they have an audit or they have something else that you prevent. I think that's more important. I know that we want people to have access to their money for hardships, but if it's gonna cause them a tax burden or something else further down the road, I don't know that that's fair that we say, oh yeah, here's your money, but we have somebody that's policing it for you now that's saving you, as opposed to throwing them to the sharks and letting them figure it out on their own. I don't know that that's a good fiduciary responsibility.
I agree. I think we could possibly even wait even longer to see the data from the other agencies and see how they're handling it and stuff like that. But yeah.
And I assume
that's
there's
good.
still tax implications for them when they are taking out this money for hardships.
Yes.
We were talking about the money for the safety officers, that's tax-free, but they would have their own tax implications.
They would
As
pay
well.
federal and state tax.
Okay.
Assuming they're in California.
So,
And I'm sure that you're gonna be talking about it at NAGDA.
I don't think we need.
That's gonna be a hot topic.
Hey, it's out there. We
And
just keep on
being
getting
with your
information.
peers, it'll definitely come up
We
there.
Don't need to make a decision anytime.
Just starting to have to reach the conversational level now.
Okay.
We weren't even able to administer it until now, so we just became able to, I think Monday. So this is brand new, so we don't have any plans that have opted in yet, but.
So I have one other question about the catch-up for the 60-plus people. You were mentioning that that's going to be mandatory in January. Is that something we can offer now, or we have to wait for January? Okay.
Wait. And it's only from 60 to 63-year-olds.
There's that,
I thought it was an odd thing, to be totally honest. I'm not sure why it was just those 4 years. I haven't read through their, the reasoning. I'm not sure. But
maybe if they want to get rid of a long-term employee, they don't want them to have the benefit for 4 more years.
All right, so sounds as if committee would like to consider the safety officer.
Bringing that back.
Bring that back at the next meeting, and then we'll consider the other hardship self-declaration at a future meeting.
If everyone agrees, I mean, that's just what I,
And Brenda, did you have something else?
yeah, there's a second part.
Okay.
For public safety officers. So I did a quick printout of this morning, so it's on the bottom of page 3 and the back top of page 4. And it is something to address an issue that we've had for years and years and years for our returning public safety officers. So they fully retire and they come back and work part-time as a bailiff or do something per diem. And now that we're fully digital, the system is on or off because everyone at the county can put money while they're actively working, regardless of their status. And so the challenge that it creates for our returning public safety officers is they're coming back per diem or part-time, and now that locks down their deferred compensation withdrawal opportunities. So there is a legislation that says you can adopt an optional age 50 in-service withdrawal for public safety. So that would mean that while they're actively working in whatever capacity, that once they hit age 50, they could put money in, but also withdraw from the nest egg that they've built up. So that's something I'd love to see added for our public safety officers so that they can feel comfortable about coming back to work, knowing that they still would have access to their money that they've saved over the years.
And it might actually stop somebody from transferring out of the system if they felt that that return was going to limit their ability
Exactly.
to access the account.
So it's great for employee retention.
What do you do on the two-tier employees that now they're, what's 57, right? I mean, how does that address those folks?
I didn't see anything in here about that it was tier related. It just talks about the fact that it's at age 50.
Because
And I'm
now a
guessing,
lot of municipalities are adjusting a different percentage rate
the
at a
second
different
tier.
time, yeah.
no, you're absolutely right. So I'm not aware of anything for the second tier, but it is at age 50. And it just would be a complement to the provision you already have in place. San Joaquin County is one of a couple of the agencies that I work with. You have age 59 and a half in-service withdrawal provision already available for active employees. So this would be just like that, but for public safety officers, yes.
I could say real-world retention, this would make an impact, because you see folks all the time retire from public safety, and they could go work in the jail part-time, they could go work in the courts part-time, we have background investigators part-time, but some of them don't, because then they would lose their deferred comp ability to move money around. And so they're forced to either withdraw from the plan completely, which we don't want to see, or they can't touch it until they, want to separate again for a second time from the county. So for public safety retention, I think this would be an asset for us.
Yeah.
So is this something we could bundle together and when,
Yes, with the item that's coming back for consideration, yes.
okay, then I changed my motion to include that.
We don't need a motion. I think Jennifer has
just a
direction
direction.
for the next agenda.
So, okay, so, all right.
And we don't
Is that
need
okay with
to agendize the
I don't know what the
required
number is.
2.0, Secure 2.0 on the 60, because that'll just become part of it. Okay.
Our white paper.
Thanks, Erin.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. That concludes our part. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so next on the agenda, we have the fiduciary rule first.
Yeah, good.
Vincent.
Thank you for the opportunity to present today. I always like following Nationwide. They do a great job. So in terms of the next agenda item regarding what's going on in the legal regulatory environment, it made the headlines towards the end of April of this year. The fiduciary rule reared its head again, and it caused a lot of headlines in the retirement plan industry. And so I said reared its head again, because if you go back prior to 2016, financial services firms and the employees of these firms like banks or investment banks or brokerages, et cetera, whenever they worked with retirement plan participants, they had a much lower legal standard or duty to their clients, and it was called the brokerage standard. Essentially, any recommendation or any advice had to be merely suitable. And so a couple things happened. There were some abuses in the financial world with these retirement plan participants, but as defined benefits or pensions dropped and more participant-directed plans, assets grew massively, the Department of Labor came out and proposed to hire that legal bar or responsibility from the brokerage model or suitability standard to the best interest or fiduciary standard. And the Department of Labor got on board and said to the financial services industry, this is now your new bar, your heightened standard that you must abide when you work with retirement plan participants. Since it was such a seismic shift, the Department of Labor gave the industry a year to retool their model, their training, everything built in their DNA to increase the legal standard. And all was fine, except for one Department of Labor left due to the election, and a new Department of Labor came on board and said, time out. Department of Labor or Labor Secretary said, this is a seismic shift, but we're gonna pause it a little bit. And so all of a sudden, this momentum in the industry ended pretty quickly. Except for the internal machinations of a lot of these financial services firms, either they were so close to the gold line in changing their model and their training, et cetera, or maybe they felt that that was truly noble, but nonetheless, a lot of financial services firms maintain that higher standard anyway. But nonetheless, not a lot of them did, and sometimes the standard wasn't there. And so it actually, this fiduciary rule went in front of the Fifth Circuit, and the Fifth Circuit vacated it. So now all of a sudden, it's just languishing without any department support or judicial support until April of this year, when the new Department of Labor came out and said, we're going to reenact this fiduciary standard with the financial services firms with retirement plan participants. But again, because it was such a seismic shift that they thought they were going to give it 150 days to be implemented September 25th or at the end of September of this year. Well, two things happened. One, a lawsuit was filed, and many, many politicians came out against this new standard. And so, even though it made the headlines in April, we are seeing it challenged not only in the court or the judicial branch, but also in the legislative branch. And so more to come. And back to kind of to regroup to the nationwide, a lot of times committees are saying, well, would this impact us? Yes, if you have an Edward Jones or a Schwab financial service professional, if this rule is enacted, they would adopt fiduciary status and they would have to basically make these recommendations in the participant's best interest. And then it goes back to the advice tool that was, I think, slide 13 or 12, the My Investment was MIP, right? Not MERP, but MIP.
Advice, MIP.
The advice. And so again, under this model, any record keeper giving advice to the participants wouldn't have to be merely suitable. The recommendation would be in their best interest. And so that's the update. And again, it made headlines and it was earth-shattering in April, but kind of we expected that there was going to be some challenges as noted.
How does that work when it's risk? I mean, right? I mean, all of these things have inherent risk involved. So then how do you hold somebody accountable?
So if the investment or the direction or advice was not in their best interest, meaning that it profited the financial services firm,
okay, I see.
there would be basis for a challenge, or the participant could sue, in other words.
So what was the opposition's point? That you're holding all these folks that just provide basic services at a higher level?
There'd be heightened liability. It would stymie the discussion between the professional and the participant. Essentially, it would quash the ability for these professionals to do their job.
That's why there's so many lawsuits.
So it was, like I said, after 2016, in April, it made headlines throughout the industry, but was very, very quickly muted. Other comments, questions? Okay, let's talk about the economy.
Well, there's
market.
more to come on that, then obviously that's not
Yes,
happening.
absolutely, yes. Okay. So hopefully you have the thick report in front of you. As I go through this, I won't go over every page, but I will talk about what we're seeing in the economy and the markets. I'll skip over, true to form, the text-heavy narrative, pages 1 through 3. And as I go through this, if anybody has questions or comments, please let me know. We have settled into this Goldilocks economy. I'm on the page 4, upper left, where we talk about our economic output. One measure of economic output or activity is the gross domestic product. And the solid line is the dollar value of all the goods and services produced in the United States in any given year. And that solid line corresponds to the left-hand vertical legend, hence the dollar signs. But most economists focus on the year-over-year change, and that's that lightly dotted line, and that corresponds to the right-hand vertical legend, hence the percentage. And the Goldilocks economy, at least as measured by GDP, is this 2 to 3% growth rate, where there's expansion, but it's not overheated. And they call it the Goldilocks, and I've said this over the past several quarters, because it's not too hot, not too cold. And the nice thing is, since 2022, we have experienced this Goldilocks economy. In fact, I don't know if you read the newspaper today, or at least heard on the news, the first quarter number came in at 1.4. The second quarter was announced this morning at 2.8. So there's expansion, and it just gives fodder, or at least ammunition, for the Federal Reserve to say, yes, we have achieved this soft landing. We raised interest rates significantly to try and bring down inflation, which we'll talk about in a minute, but we didn't cause the economy to contract or go into this recession. And so in terms of interest rate decreases, there's 2, possibly 3 decreases priced in the market this year. But let me put a pin on that. So we got a 2.8% print on GDP this morning. That could be revised upward or downwards because it's merely an advanced number. But the news continues to be good around this Goldilocks, not too hot, not too cold jobs numbers. So as I move over to the upper right, I want to talk about the unemployment rate. And the unemployment rate is basically a measure of all people looking for a job but can't find one. And a measure of full employment is an unemployment rate of 5%. It has been below 4% for the last 2.5 years. We just ticked up to 4.1, and the last time we saw that high of a number was November of 2021. And so, again, back to the point of, we are experiencing a great unemployment number, but it's not so low to cause fear in the Federal Reserve's mind that inflation will heat up again. Here in the county, it's a little bit higher at 5.5%, but that's still relatively healthy, or very close to that 5% full employment number.
So I have a
Yeah.
quick, so the swings and the dotted line and the, like in the gross domestic product, that's the percentage that you're talking about? I don't understand year to date versus, I mean, those are pretty big spreads now.
Yes, the big spread on that, the solid line,
What does that represent?
the big swing was COVID.
No, I'm just saying now that for first quarter, on the gross domestic product, it's,
Oh, back to gross domestic product?
yeah, so I mean, why is there between, that's 12% difference, year to date versus current?
Right.
What's representative of
Yeah,
that?
the solid line is the dollar value, and so the dollar value continues to climb, and that
Okay.
corresponds to the left-hand vertical. And so we are seeing that expansion.
Okay.
And so you're going to see an increase, but the dollar amount is going to be like this. The year-over-year change is gonna be much flatter.
Okay, so
Yeah,
it
so
doubles, you're saying it's doubling, but the year-to-year change is.
Correct.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Yeah, I apologize. I think or the chart should have been clearer. And then now, as I move to the bottom right chart, this is that inflationary number that I talked about. If you remember, about 2 years ago, the inflation number was 9.1%. That was a 50-year high. And the Federal Reserve, which has a duty to keep a lid on inflation, they call it price stability, they have a 2% target. So that 9.1 was so high, what they did was they started to raise interest rates. When the cost of capital is high, generally we, consumers and companies and governments, stop buying as much stuff, and the indirect or direct cause is to bring down the economy as well as the inflation. But again, it's a blunt tool, and sometimes if you raise interest rates too high, too quickly, we could go into a recession, but that chance is probably non-existent given all the numbers that I talked about. The latest inflationary read is 3.0 as measured by the Consumer Price Index. And as I said, that's close enough to the 2% target that there are 2, maybe 3 interest rate decreases priced in the market. So the FOMC, or the Federal Open Market Committee, meets 8 times a year, and they are the ones that set monetary policy by either leaving rates on the overnight side where they are, or raising them or lowering them. They meet again at the end of the month. There is almost a 0% chance that rates on the overnight side will change at the end of this month. But as we move into September, there's almost 100% chance rates will drop when they meet in September. And then when they meet again in November, there's a strong likelihood rates will drop yet again. Then when they meet in December, there's about a 50-50 chance that they're going to lower rates. So that's why I said there's 2, maybe 3 interest rate cuts priced in the market. And so relatively good news, because again, we're not in this overheated economy, but the news is just mediocre enough that's going to cause lower interest rates, and that's generally good for the markets, both bond and stock market.
Isn't that convenient that there just happens to be an election in there?
Thank you. That is the footnote, and that gets as much airtime as that. As much as the FOMC claims, and Jerome Powell, chairman of the Fed, says that they're apolitical, yeah, I think that's a bold statement. So yes, I don't think it's coincidence that we have the first cut priced in September, 90 days before the election. But nonetheless, other questions, comments? Okay, flip ahead to the next page. This is the bond market or fixed income data. I want to focus just on the chart on the upper left. Second line down, you'll see the Bloomberg US aggregate. This is a good barometer of our US bond market. Historically averages about 3.5% to the positive through a full market cycle. You can see for the quarter, positive, which was relatively good, at flat to positive at 0.07%, bringing the year-to-date number of negative 0.7%, but the one-year number at 2.5%. But take a look at that 3-year number. In 2022, this index was negative 13%, and so we're still seeing the 3 and the 5-year express as negative. But as rates drop, this number is going to get better or from red to black, hopefully, because the value of bonds go up as interest rates go down. In fact, as rates have normalized, that year-to-date number moved from negative 0.7% on June 30th. As of this week, it's positive 0.4%. So a big swing from negative to positive on that year-to-date number for the ag. Moving down, the high yield index or junk bond index, about 3/4 of the way down, you'll see the Bloomberg US high yield. This is the shiny star of the fixed income marketplace. Year-to-date, 1.1%, for the quarter, 1.1%, 2.5% year-to-date. 1 year up almost 10.5%. So nice return out of the junk bond space. Year-to-date as of this week, the high yield index positive 4.1%. So nice continuation of that rally as of June 30th, or in the last month, if you will. And then the good news continues if you flip ahead to page 6, whether it's the S&P 500 or the Dow Jones Industrial Average, both of those US stock indexes are setting records, driven mostly by technology, specifically artificial intelligence. There has been a bit of correction yesterday. The market was up today significantly, but nonetheless, the upper right, the S&P 500, these are 500 large US companies, so like Microsoft, Apple, Nike, UPS, et cetera. For the quarter, up 4.3%, bringing the year-to-date number of 15.3 and the one-year number to 24.5%. As of this week, the S&P 500 is up 17.5% year-to-date. So nice return out of the US stock market. And then the news continues around the globe on the next page. This is the international stock market data. A little bit of headwind given our strong dollar, and I'll talk about that in a second. But in the upper left, the All Country World Index, or ACWI, the ACWI ex-US, essentially 45 countries outside the US, like Mexico, Canada, India, Japan. For the quarter, about 1%, bringing the year-to-date number to 5.7, the one-year number 11.6. As of this week, that year-to-date number for the ACWI ex-US is 7.5% to the positive. So nice continuation. I do want to focus on almost in the smack dab middle of the page. So I don't know if you can see the dark purple and the light purple. The dark purple bar chart for the 1 year is the local currency on those 45 countries around the globe. For 1 year, if I were a local investor, I'd be making 15.08%. Not too bad. But because of the strong dollar, and this is largely the fact that other central banks are lowering interest rates while ours are keeping the rates higher for longer, which was a term Jerome Powell's continued said, higher for longer. The US dollar is very, very strong. It works good for tourists, not so good for American investors. So back to my local return of 15.08 for the year. As I translate that for American investors, because we're here in the US, that 15% gets discounted to 11.5%. And that is just the effect of the strong dollar. Now, we're not always in a strong dollar environment. Sometimes it's actually beneficial to have a weak dollar, but nonetheless, that's the environment that we're in right now.
I have a question. So they said that the oil has always been based on the dollar. What effect does that have on renegotiating that, and what will back that?
Sure. So essentially, and this goes back, since the 40s, no matter where you are, Turkey, Middle East, whatever, petrodollars are based on US dollars. How does this impact? That means that because of the strong dollar, the fuel or whatever we're buying is generally cheaper for us because of this current dynamic. And so it would be good for us to keep rates longer for this particular reason.
Right, but then what happens if it changes to what
Like,
currency will back it?
So if for whatever reason the Chinese yuan becomes now the petrodollar or the standard, if that would happen, I think our financial markets would probably be derailed. Just because it would be such a dramatic shift, the value of our dollar would plummet. It would probably be a nightmare scenario. Yeah.
And when does that come about? I mean,
It could. I
mean-
doubt. I still, obviously, we geopolitically, we're in a much different environment than we were, I want to say 10 years ago, like a year ago. Certainly, we are seeing maybe in the world stage, our role diminish as well as other superpowers, if you will, increase. I think we're far from moving away from petrodollars or basically our US dollar as the currency of choice around the globe. Our treasuries are still the most sought after or the safest bet globally. I think our US dollars are. As much as I think it would be a nightmare, I don't think we're even remotely close to that.
okay, so it's just a threat.
Yeah, I mean, you look back, China threatened, I want to say 3 to 5, that means it's 5 to 7 years ago that they were going to unload all of our treasuries. They're one of the biggest buyers of our US debt, and they were threatening that they were going to dump it, never materialized. So yeah, I think it's probably theater,
I
but
mean, it's just something that you need to be mindful of, I mean.
yeah, among all the other
Right.
risks to
Variables,
to everything else. I will say not to go on a tangent, but to go off on a tangent, I mean, so you saw that global IT meltdown, on Monday or Friday of last week? And so I think there's a lot of threats to the system, and it could be abroad or it could be internally. Yeah. Other questions, comments? All right. Let's continue the good news. Flip ahead to the next section, page 9. No, this is good conversation. This is almost like Nationwide's overview, somewhat of an executive summary on page 9. I'll start on the upper right with the pie chart. You can see really 3 of the main colors: yellow, navy blue, and gray. Yellow is that asset allocation or target date models, the solution that Brenda was talking about, that due to the default, a lot of new money flows into these broadly diversified portfolios in one option. And then you still have about 30% in fixed income or more that conservative bond portfolio, and then 35% in that gray or large company asset class. Moving from right to left, at the fund level, we did approve the termination of both MetWest as well as Nuveen High Yield. And again, that high yield is that junk bond portfolio. MetWest was replaced with the Dodge and Cox Income. Nuveen was replaced by American Funds, and that took place about a week ago on July 12th. From a governance standpoint, we did adopt that investment policy statement at the last meeting, and from a vendor management, There's none at this time, but if there was any, I don't want to call them issues, but anything worthy of note with Nationwide or Highest, we would call that out there. Moving down into the fund notes, the 4 funds that are currently on watch, 2 that I just talked about, MetWest and Nuveen, are no longer in the plan, even though they're in this report, because the data are as of June 30th. But good news there, those first 2 are no longer in the 457 and 401A plan. The other good news is the T. Rowe Price Large Cap Growth has been in compliance for the last 2 quarters. It had a phenomenal year, up almost 40%. And so our recommendation is to remove that from watch, and that's a future agenda item here in a few minutes. The one bit of bad news that gives our analysts discomfort is the continued underperformance of this last fund. It's the Invesco Real Estate. It's underweight more of the economically sensitive sectors, so think industrial, malls. I think there are still malls, but yeah, they were underweight malls, industrial, and gaming like casinos. Some of these sectors actually did better, and there's really little visibility on this fund bouncing back. And so if you take a look at the recommendation, retain the watch status, but consider replacing. Our recommendation is either at the next meeting or the meeting after that, bring a search document to take a look at possible replacement candidates for this Invesco Real Estate Fund. You'll see, I don't want to say not a lot, because $2 million is a lot of money, but I use this term very loosely. Well, there's only $2 million or less than 0.5% of the assets. So there's 0.33% of the plan assets in this particular fund. But I don't want to discount it because I want to frame the context that it's not an overwhelming piece of the portfolio. But back to my point, $2 million is still a lot of money. But I just want to put that into context. Yeah.
So if that's replaced, say we, on a subsequent meeting, vote to replace that with a different fund, are the folks in that with that $2 million automatically allocated into that? Or how does the distribution work further in their plan? I'm not familiar.
Sure. So similar to MetWest and Nuveen, if the board adopts a change of removing that fund and replacing it, it would take 2 weeks for Nationwide to make sure the new fund is on the platform and draft a participant notice. And then after 2 weeks of the decision, they would send us collectively a draft of that participant notification 30 days prior to, let's say, September 19th. That notice goes out to the participants. 30 days, September 19th, participant, your money, any future contributions will go into the new fund. If you don't want that to happen, you can make a change now to avoid that mapping. Otherwise, and this is probably the answer to your question, otherwise on September 19th, those monies and future contributions will automatically go to the new fund.
Because what we aim to do is replace one with a similar fund, so we go with the default. That's what generally folks would want unless they opt out.
So this one is a little bit different because it's that niche fund that John was talking about that some people in the self-directed brokerage. It's not a mid-cap or large cap or fixed income fund. It is a dedicated sector fund investing in real estate investment trusts. So to answer your question rather long-windedly, we could possibly replace it with another real estate fund. You could say, you know, Vincent, there's less than 0.5% there. Why don't we just map it to a mid-cap index fund? Because most real estate investment trusts look and talk and act like a mid-cap fund. So you could do one of the two things. Well, one of three things. One, we could leave Invesco at a future meeting. You could replace it with another real estate fund, or you could say, not a lot of traction. Let's just move it into a fund that's already on the menu that looks very, very similar. Yeah.
Question on it, when you're taking it off or considering taking it off the list, are you just looking at the returns and making a decision on that? Or are you talking to the fund manager? Is there a deal in the works that's going to bring them back from these losses that are right around the corner? Again, are we speaking to the managers?
Yes, yes, yes. All three of those are yeses. So we are looking at the performance. We are talking to the management team, and we're trying, using both of those, looking at the past market and how they behaved in that market and the strategy and the personnel. And I call it this cloudy crystal ball because we're pretty good with the art and science about predicting future returns, but it's cloudy, meaning we're far, far from perfect. But what we try and do is not just look at past performance, because sometimes good managers suffer weakness. And it's all, I've used this before, it's almost like employees. You could have good long-term employees that call in sick on a Friday or call in sick on Monday. It's not ideal, but we give all of us grace, and that's how we view managers. So when we recommend termination, it's the lack of confidence that the team or the portfolio or the structure, the process, there's just better opportunities out there. Yeah.
So just one more comment. There's 513 participants in that fund. And so we would send them a notification just to those 513, letting them know that this fund's being eliminated and on a specific date. And then they have until that date to move out if they want. And most people don't, and they map into the new one.
I'm sorry. Okay, moving forward to page 10, and Fonse, I think this is what you were asking, but this is for the 457. On page 10, towards the bottom half, you can see this is just the investment return, not counting any cash flow. And so for the quarter, the 457 plan was up almost 2% at 1.7, bringing the year-to-date number of 7.8%, and the one-year number, not too bad, at 13.75%. And certainly with the bad 2022 and just the longer duration, the 3 and the 5 year, you can see the 457 returned annually 4% and 7.6% over those periods. On page 12, just towards the bottom of that section, you see the Invesco Real Estate Fund, 1.7 million, or I rounded up 2 million, 0.31%. And then on page 13, this just goes back to the issue that we have talked about, and I want to highlight it just to make the board aware. Towards the middle, the cash flow summary, I bring this up just because, again, I'm hoping that we can find some solution of either bringing the contributions and roll-ins up or stopping the outflow. You can see over $10 million more left the plan in the fourth quarter, and I think it goes back to John's point about the RMDs. A lot more distributions or participants wait until the fourth quarter to take distributions. It's since settled back down in the first quarter at 3.7, but in the second quarter, just under $1 million more left the plan. And then on page 15, nicely, because of market gains, the plan has started 2020 at 450 million-ish, ended the year just under 500 million. Back to my point about a very, very weak 2022, both in the stock and the bond market. Went down to 465 million, but you can see at the end of the second quarter, just over 550 million. So even eclipsing the 2021 high water mark that was that recent past. So nice return. Now as we move into the 401A plan, a little bit different return characteristics. On page 16, you can see for the first quarter up 2.5%, bringing the year to date 10.25%. The 1 year just over 18%, which is pretty nice. And then on page 18, and this is where we pad those numbers to get closer to the $2 million. You can see Invesco Real Estate, at the bottom of page 18, 220,000 or 0.74% of the assets of this particular plan. And then the cash flow characteristics on page 19, a little bit different in the 401A program. Cash flow positive over 2 out of the 4 quarters, which is nice to see. And then on page 21, nice growth rate since 2019 and since 2022. And then next section is page 22. And you can see from a high level or intuitive overview of the funds and how they satisfy the metrics in your investment policy statement. I'll focus on the dots on the 2 right-hand columns. 2 of the red dots, you can see that MetWest and Nuveen, those are showing red or violating metrics as of June 30th. As I said, after a week ago, those 2 funds are gone. That T. Rowe Price, no longer violating metrics, so the 2 dots have been blue for the 2 previous quarters. And then that Invesco Real Estate is still violating the metrics. And then moving to page 25, This is where I was talking about the fund that's currently on watch, about maybe a third of the way down. You'll see that blue row with the T row price. I talked about it over the last year, up almost 40%. You can see for the 1 year up 36%. And then in that grayed out row directly beneath the 36.03 is the 18th. That means it's the 18th percentile, which across all large cap growth managers, it was in the upper quartile, which is pretty nice to see. So nice recovery there. And then next section, page 30. This is the fee review. This would be a nice exhibit to outline either to participants or, gosh, if there was ever an exhibit, if there was a challenge, you can see the fees have gradually, but have gone down over the last several years. How this chart is laid out is the light blue. These are the investment costs that the participants are paying directly to the fund managers. You can see in 2019, it was just under 40 basis points or 37.7 basis points or 0.377%. Here in the second quarter, it was just over 34 or 0.342%. The navy blue portion is the amount that the committee or board uses for plan-related expenses. And then the orange portion is the revenue requirement from Nationwide. And so you can see, again, all three of those components have dropped gradually over time. Due to rounding, that 2.3 in the orange is actually 2.25. So the administrative tack-on fee to the participants is 5.75 basis points or 0.0575. And then on the next page, second to right-hand column, I talked about the expense ratio. This is what the participants are paying. Even though it's fully disclosed, the fund managers simply deduct their fee out of her or his return and then report the performance net of fees to the participants. But it adds up. And so if you flip ahead to the next page, that light blue line about a quarter of the way down, you can see based on assets, annually about $1.9 million paid to the fund managers. And then the next section is the accounting of that administrative tack-on fee. Again, Nationwide gets 32, yeah. The light blue line, upper right, about a quarter of the way down, you'll see that net and estimated expense, $1.885 million. And then the next box is the accounting, the record keeper fee or Nationwide's revenue requirement of 2.25 is about $125,000 annually, $31,000 a quarter, or $17 per participant. And then on top of that is a 3.5 basis points or about $192,000, $48,000 quarterly, or $27 per participant. And then unless anybody has questions on the fees, this was the request. If you flip ahead to page 36, this looks a little anemic, but we're going to build this in, quarter out. So one of the questions in a previous meeting was, okay, you talked about the fees, Vincent. There's going to be some going to Nationwide, some going to the fund managers, but let's talk about the plan-related expense here at the county. We're going to, every quarter, start with the beginning balance, and you can see on page 36, the plan expense account that you can use for plan-related expenses. Legal, audit, consulting, NAGDA conference. Started at $79,074, and this is accurate to the dollar. It's not estimated. There was about a $50,000 contribution, some growth, no distributions, and so you as a member can see, again, next quarter there'll be 2 lines, next quarter 3, et cetera. You can see what is exactly in this balance to compare it to any budget, to see if there's excess, maybe trim the fee or give some back, keep it for a rainy day. You can make better decisions with this new ledger. So hopefully this helps in terms of just understanding the budget, or at least the account. For good or ill, the IRS says the only requirement, it has to benefit participants. And if you could prudently or reasonably say this benefits participants, it gives you a lot of berth. Yeah.
Yeah, if there's something creative you would like us to do, we're all ears. so.
I've seen counties do a luncheon / benefit fair. It was huge. I saw it over at Sonoma County.
Rather see it do the back. Let's come back to the fees, administration fees, and it's $27 per order. How does it, $100 a year roughly? How does that compare to others? Again, we always look at the, fees are always important to look at it. We should, as a community, always try to look at it as possible. $43 per class, right? Something to regret.
So compared to others, it's within the band of average to below average.
And then, apologize. Let's say, again, I know sometimes you make a recommendation to remove a fund. Let's say it's not these funds, but let's say it was a bigger fund. Does it impact the market at all if you and all your clients kind of move out of a fund? Or is it just kind of immaterial overall to the entire outstanding shares of that fund?
So, just to be more accurate, when you say does it move the market? No. These funds are institutional funds, and so they're regardless of where they're focused, it's not gonna move the market. It could conceivably, when we essentially terminate en masse, dramatically impact the fund. But it wouldn't impact the market.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's why I was more concerned of it impacts the fund, so, okay.
Yes.
To piggyback on that, so you said there's 551 people that you would have to notify if you were gonna do that? Is that what you said earlier?
Correct. Well, do you, and sorry,
Who
maybe you
said that
should
one?
answer. Do you alert all participants or just the participants in each fund?
Just the participants that have that fund would receive the notification. So if it was just that fund being eliminated, we'd only send out 513 letters. So,
I guess-
yeah.
I'm looking at this as if someone's paying attention to this meeting, and we exit out Fund A, and then next week you end up doing that, and then it drives the price of Fund A down, because someone could potentially come in and short that fund and take advantage of it.
Potentially, but the fund is so big and the assets here are so small that,
But it would, but you wouldn't recommend, your recommendation would not only be for our fund, but for all your other clients, I'm assuming would.
right, but I have one other fund with one other plan with this fund. So it's,
I'm just saying, not just this fund, just a fund in general.
Hypothetical.
Yes.
yeah, yeah, conceivably, that could be valuable information.
Okay.
Yes, hypothetically, yeah. I'm afraid, like, were my answers that bad, or am I just lulling you to sleep?
Would that be something we would do in closed session, so you wouldn't go out there? Because again, I know sometimes when we're terminating fund managers at the retirement board, there's people listening in, and they'll put it in their newsletter to the other funds, to the other side. So again, I'm just thinking out loud.
Yeah.
All right, anything else for Vincent?
Well, no, that thinking out loud, do we need to do that? Do we need to do that, is what you're worried about?
I think the distinction would be as the retirement board, the board takes the action, correct? Whereas here you guys are an advisory board and ultimately the plan administrator would take the action respective to the plan. So just because there's a vote to take certain action on a particular fund, it may not necessarily translate to the plan administrator
Right,
implementing
but-
that per se. So maybe it's distinct, there's a distinction
I
in
think
terms
that
of the
they-
action that this committee is taking versus the retirement board.
Yeah, I get it, we're an advisory committee, but then again, if we're advising something and she does do it, it will have that same impact. And again, it just seems like, it just seems funny. Again, I'm looking at it, I guess from my perspective, what I would do if I know that you're gonna move out of a certain fund and it's gonna, and I know that it's material, again, you wanna get in front of it. you could potentially make some money off this data, so.
Yeah, and part of me says, as a fiduciary, that's immaterial because you can't control how other people act, especially if you're bound by the laws that these are public meetings. That's one of the downsides of the public nature of the meetings. You could then go to closed session. The alternative, though, is if the position is so big that you're going to terminate and somebody acts on that, it could potentially harm you because of the fund change is gonna happen in September, and a lot of activity could happen, whether it be shorting or whatever, in the next 2 months, yeah.
Especially the SWAT accounts go crazy.
That issue
Was
has
that
never,
Grizzly, like triple X Grizzly Fund or whatever? Yeah, anyway.
Vincent, that issue has never came up before in the past? Again, I'm assuming this isn't anything new about, removing a fund.
In terms of the public nature of these meetings and I want to call it just witnesses or participants acting in advance of that information? No. What we have talked about is when there's a fund where there's an urgency or we have it in mass, we want to act very, very quickly, so we're not the last ones after a lot of the other plans have exited. So we have talked about the timing of that, but not about participants in a public meeting acting. Yeah, when Bill Gross was
Yeah.
fired or quit, yeah, that impacted a lot of our clients, the PIMCO total return. Yeah. Madam Chair, I have one more?
Yes.
Okay, so the action on the last part of the agenda, at least for us, was to remove that T. Rowe Price large cap growth from watch status because of the significant recovery, now no longer violating metrics, not just this quarter, but the first quarter. And I say that because language in the investment policy statement says that plans or funds need to be in compliance for 2 consecutive quarters to generally be removed from watch status.
This is Fonse, I'll make a motion to remove T. Rowe
Second.
Price from the watch status.
We have a first and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. So
Thank you
next on
again.
our agenda is comments from the committee members.
Just kind of reiterating what I was talking about before, if you guys could look at this, see if we could find some sort of rate of return on the investments that people have in their portfolio, would be great. Again, it's just, I'm not sure. Sometimes I think, is it a good thing or is it a bad thing, right? You see your portfolio go one way, maybe you think it's not going so well, and then they pulling out, but I like to kind of see where we're at and stuff. Because it is kind of difficult to look down and say, okay, well, this fund is creating X, but yet I only have X amount of that fund to kind of actually find a total rate of return there.
I would love that as well, because I'm not great at math where you say, oh, you have this much and it's done this much, and then you have to calculate that all the way down across potentially, I mean, there could be 30 funds you have, so I think that'd be huge.
I just want to commend Brenda for going for the landfill, because I was just there recently, and I think that's pretty cool, because not a lot of people would think like that. But I mean, as a county supervisor, I appreciate that you treat all employees equally, and I think that's very important, so thank you for doing that.
Especially if you went at this time of year, because I know I've been there on a very warm day and it's special.
And it smells so well.
I think, Vincent, did you have one more thing?
Yeah, so sorry, real quick, so at the end of last meeting, there were 3 requests. One was, the end of last meeting, there were 3 requests. One was to get information to you even sooner, and so that was a message that I sent to my team. The challenge is, this meeting is so close to quarter end, but we did try to expedite Nationwide working with us to get the data, so I don't know if the improvement was there in terms of getting information even sooner, but we took that to heart, so hopefully that was checked off. But if not, please let us know. Just understand that the meeting is fairly close. The second had to do with that ledger that I talked about. That was done, and again, we'll beef that up. But the third one we're still working on internally, and that was to match the reports with more of the agenda, or at least have them coincide a little bit better. So we're still working on that, so more to come there. But again, thank you for the opportunity today.
Thank you. All right, anything else? All right, then our next advisory committee meeting is October 24th. And meeting is adjourned.